Welcome to our new launch studio review series. Today we're going to talk about an upcoming new launch that's very exciting in the Mount Sinai area. Let's look at Nava Grove.
Open Grand PSF is trending around the range of 1,003.
If we convert it to a 3 plus flexi, it's actually about 5.15 in terms of length.
Step 2, 3 and 21, they are 5 baiters. They face internally towards the pool.
Now let's look at Nava Grove today. This is a launch by MCR Land as well as Sinai's Land. Now, some key facts over at the screen. Let's turn our attention to the screen. 552 units, and of course the estimated launch price, we don't have it yet. Right now, based on some very popular portals, for example, HProp, one of the tools that we always use, their prediction is about 2331 PSF based on their calculator online. But of course, all these are subject to developers' indicative launch price closer to date. So tenure 99 years, D21. Now the key is this is the Mount Sinai area. Let's have a look at the map first, because over here, let me just show you where is the exact locale. So in terms of the exact locale, this is of course the very favorable Mount Sinai zone. And I'm referring to this entire part. So of course the first draw point will be Henry Park Primary School. When people are looking at Henry Park Primary School, they usually will look at the landed properties as well as the condos right here. This area is unique in a sense that it is like a bridge that is very tied in with Bukit Timah address as well as Holland address as well as 6th Avenue. So usually, most of the time from Bukit Timah, people cut through 6th Avenue Road, they come into the main Holland Road and then they will come into the Mount Sinai region. Of course, you have other access points as well from Clementi, from Sunset Way. So this is really like the interlinking portion right here between D21 and D10. And of course, you also have District 5, which is at the bottom. So you have District 10 here, District 21 here, and then you have District 5 here at the bottom, which is Dover area. And of course, that would then link you towards One North. It would then link you towards the Silicon Valley of Singapore, which is at Buona Vista. So one good thing is that right at the front and the back, there's like green lungs, of course, Dover Forests, as well as Clementi Forests. But of course, take note, a lot of the green lung, they have been zoned residential. There's going to be future plans, which is actually very good for the area because there's going to be more and more residential plots, be it whether is it like high price, prime zone HDB apartments, which has already surpassed $1 million in some of the key areas at Dover, or whether is it new condominium plots that will be up for bidding. These are all good news to rejuvenate the whole area. So let's come back. Let's have a look at some of the key numbers. So our team has tabulated this project tenure, TOP and units, and we want to look at basically some of the projects right here. So if you notice, the latest project was the Trizon. That is a freehold apartment. And of course, when you look at some of the projects right here, they have a very good mix. I would say probably about 50% will be freehold, another about 30% will be 999 years, as well as another 20% will be 99. Some of the 99 projects are Astor Green, which was TOP 995, Cavendish Park 996, Serenade at Holland 204, you have Quintera 209, and then of course now the two latest 99 years will be Pine Tree Hill as well as Nava Grove. So in totality, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total projects. So in totality, we have 6 total projects for 99 years. The rest are 999 years and freehold, out of which the list of close to probably about 20 units. So 99 years would then form probably about 25% of the total project pool there. But what is the key thing over here is that the 99 years projects, we want to look further into and see how they perform over the years. So of course, when we look at some of the 99 years development, let's have a look at, for example, Astor Green. And we want to look at the trending graph. So based on square foot, of course, when we look at the trending graph, this graph has been quite similar to the overall price movement of the entire Singapore residential market that surpassed, of course, Asian financial crisis, which is 1997 over here. And then you went through like a plateau period over here as well. Lehman Brothers, there was a slight dip. And then after that, we came up to 2013, slight dip, plateau, and then boost up all the way after COVID QE. Now, it's very important to know what is happening in the market, because we like to look at macro and then we come to micro in order to make a decision of whether should we go for a particular new launch and how do we look at the market in general. So importantly, we want to look at macro as well. Because before we even try to understand whether should we go in at this particular launch price, this particular project, this particular location, we want to look at macro first, because macro determines our micro. And then before we head on to selection factors. So in PRB, we talk about these three things. Macro should be in the middle, then it will shape our micro and selection factors. So let's talk a little bit about macro first so that everybody understands what is the landscape of new launch project prices in the next 24 months. Importantly, we already kick-started the phase of what I call a boom cycle, which is, in short, in Singapore, we call it the seller's market. We have just exited the buyer's market for the last 24 months, which started in March 2022, all the way towards September 2024. In fact, that's more than 24 months. I would say it's about 30 months where we had 11 rounds of rate hikes from Fed, and that is considered quantitative tightening, QT. Now we're entering back into QE. In order to reduce interest rates, one of the most important measure for monetary policy is always injection of liquidity. And later I'll share a little bit more how that happens and how that increases money supply and eventually why it flows into real estate. So September, we have 50 basis point cut. So Fed actually dropped their rates from 5.5 to 5%. So if you look at this, basically just to give you an illustration of the rate hikes we had for 30 months. And now we are at this point, we call it an inflection point, where we are reducing rates for the first time after 30 months. Now in Singapore, it has already taken effect. Our rates have now dropped to 2.5%. You can get 2.5% loan for some of the resale properties. Of course, new launch will be slightly higher. But overall, the climate has changed already. Buyers are getting more confident, come back to the market. And of course, these are the summary of all the QEs that happened. QE 1, 2, 3, 4. And importantly is that if you want to take note of what is happening in the market, you need to look at some of the very specific price movement, and I will call this price movement based on these 4 bubbles, which I want to show you over here. These 4 bubbles are extremely important because for these 4 bubbles to happen, it doesn't happen all the time. Now, I've highlighted basically these 4 bubbles. Right now, if I look at resale 99 years, of course, there's like a avoid button over here. It doesn't mean we should avoid all projects, but it will make sense for you if you are really from an investment angle and you want to grow your capital. What do I mean by this is that now we have come to a stage that a lot of the 99 years projects, good density, but maybe they are 20 years old, they are asking for a quantum price that's quite similar to TOP projects. That means new projects that has been launched about 4 years ago. Now the owners has taken key, they are trying to sell in the resale market. The quantum is about the same. Of course, the size might be different, but the key thing is this is newer. This is like having a balance lease of 95 years. This is having a balance lease of 79 years. So quantum-wise, it will make sense to go for some of the TOP projects within the same region or same district. Now, when you come to this, 99 years in terms of PSF level, actually is very close to some of the TOP projects. Some of the TOP projects are asking for 2001, 2003 PSF. But if you can get a new launch in the range of about 2003, 2005, 2006 PSF, the difference in terms of the spread is actually quite close. So if you're somebody that wants to go for a brand new launch that has what we call a herd mentality 3 years later, because let's come to this whiteboard over here. One key thing is that in 2024, if you buy a new launch and let's say you have the first mover advantage, we're talking about the first mover advantage, and 2028, 4 years later, let's say when your project TOP, what is going to happen is that if there are 550 owners here, and you happen to be somebody that bought into phase 1. So usually there are 3 phases. Phase number 1 is what we call the VVIP phase. Now, phase number 2, let me just increase my density a little bit. Phase number 2 will be usually people that have missed the VVIP phase because maybe you haven't sold your property in time, but then you come in and you buy units right in the middle. But usually the first mover is that they usually go for the best quantum. So if you're hunting for a new launch strategy, try to go in as much as you can at the VVIP phase, because this is like the balloting phase. You get the best chance to get the lowest quantum of the stack that you're hunting for, be it a 2, 3, or 4 beta. And then if you missed it, you then have to go for some of the units that's balanced. So usually, maybe by this time, let's say there's 50% balance or 60 or maybe 40% balance, prices will have moved up in terms of quantum. Not because that the developer has increased price, maybe some developers do that, but it's because that the low quantum units has already been snapped up. So once the low quantum units are snapped up, we are left with like mid quantum to high quantum. And usually the last phase is that you have no choice, but you have to go for high quantum units, all right? But high quantum doesn't mean that it's no good sometimes, because maybe the rest of the market has already moved on, and then if you're left with a high quantum unit, but it's still cheaper than some of the latest new launches that are going to launch, then maybe it will make sense, all right? So let's come back to this, is that if you belong to the first batch of owners that waited 4 years together, this is what we call a herd mentality. Herd mentality is actually a positive word, because this is like a one-off psychology that you do not need to coordinate with everybody that bought with you. And let's say everybody come in at about 2005 PSF. What is going to happen in 4 years' time is that at 2005 PSF, everybody will likely say that, hey, we will only sell if we can hit 2008 PSF, because it would then make no sense for us to sell. We've waited 4 years. We have went through progressive payment, although it's not a lot. But most importantly is that I want to make sense. If I want to sell, cover my buyer's stamp duty, cover some of my interest, for it to be meaningful, I want to see $300 gain. If not, I'll just rent out, I'll just stay. So this is a one-off herd mentality. We call it like an auto boost. So an auto boost upwards of $300. I'm not saying that it will be limited to $300, but by and large, based on a lot of data, it's about $100 per year. So it could be $300, it could be $400, but it depends on the size that you're going for. Of course, take note, if you're going for a bigger unit between 2 beta, 3 beta, 4 beta, 5 betas, bigger units where you own bigger square footage, $100 increase in terms of PSF is different for all the units. For example, if this is 700 square feet, 900 square feet, 1,003 square feet, 1,700 square feet, $100 PSF increase will translate to 70K, 90K, 130K, as well as 170K. So it's totally different. Of course, what that means is that you have to plan and strategize accordingly. Whether are you going for a bigger unit, whether are you going for a dual key. My favorite is actually the 4 beta dual key. You should check out our show flat review at Nava Grove. That's my favorite technically, because it has dual facing and has limited amount. I think that's going to be a clear winner. I think that will be snap out on day one. But other than that, actually the rest of the units also look pretty cool as well. So this is basically the strategy that a lot of people are hunting for, because 3 years later or 4 years later, let's say by 2028, you already cleared your SSD. We call it a blackout period. Basically, you don't have to care. You just pay progressive payment for your CPF. Later part, just about a little bit of cash. By the time you collect your keys, then you still don't hit the full-blown installment, because at TOP, your installment is not full-blown yet. It's only after 6 to 12 months when you hit CSC, then your installment is full-blown. So that's the benefit of sometimes why people really love to go for a new launch, because they can just what we call set and forget. We call this a set and forget kind of strategy. That means you go in, set and forget, all right? So let's come back to this. Now, what I'm saying here is that if the disparity for, let's say, this district, for example, in D21, if you're hunting for something in D21 or D5, let's just take these two comparisons, and let's say there are some projects that you're thinking of going, maybe they just TOP last year or this year, but the PSF that the owners are asking for their TOP projects is at 2.2 or 2.3, then wait for Nava Grove and see how much they are launching. Because if this is 2.2 and 2.3, and this is at 2.5 or 2.6, and the difference is like $200-300, then all the more it makes sense to go for the new launch. Why? Because all the TOP projects that were launched 3-4 years ago, their sizes are about the same. After 2013, all the sizes that developers launch are roughly the same. 2 betas, 600-700 square feet, 3 betas, 900 to 1,000 square feet, 4 betas, 1,000, 2,003 square feet, 5 betas, 1,000, 6,007 square feet. It's all the same. So if the PSF is only $200-300, it's too close to get. Unless the gap is about $500-600, then you need to really like just sit down, work out the numbers. But if it's $200-300 gap, it makes a lot of sense to consider a new launch movement. And sometimes this disparity gap happens in certain seasons, because not all seasons are what we call the correct pairing season. Now let's come back to Nava Grove. Now when we come back to Nava Grove, I want to show you basically what happens to our money supply. Now, basically after all the QE injection, QE basically once QE starts, the first indicator is that interest rate will start to lower first, and then they have to increase money supply. The way to do it is, of course, the reason to do it is because they want to stimulate economic growth. Job data is not looking good. They want to prevent a US recession. And of course, this is called a boom and bust cycle. But most of the time, the side effect is that asset prices will start to increase. And of course, this is the US money supply ever since QE. So if you look at QE's impact, basically in terms of QE impact for all apartments and condos, resale properties. And why do I talk about resale? Is because once you buy the new launch 4 years later, you want to know what's happening in the resale market. So when we look at all the cycle over here, basically what happens is that we went through 4 rounds of QE. QE 1, Lehman Brothers, QE 2, 2010, QE 3, 2012, 2014, COVID QE 2020 to 2022, en bloc boom in Singapore 2018. Now, en bloc is not happening now. A lot of developers are going for GLS land, and of course that is something that is in trend right now. But of course in future, when GLS land is of a certain price quantum already in terms of land bid price, and let's say en bloc really happens in Mount Sinai, then what is going to happen is that all the Mount Sinai, triple nines and freehold, once they hit en bloc, and if it's really successful, although some of the en bloc asking prices are pretty high in terms of tender price by the current owners and the en bloc committee, but if it happens, it's going to further elevate the freehold and triple nines prices in the entire Mount Sinai area, which will definitely be more than the launch price of Nava Grove, because definitely they will surpass $3,000 PSF for freehold triple nine in that zone. And that's going to be great news, and it will form a greater disparity basically for the launch price of 99s over there versus the freehold. Now let's come back to this, is that we're entering into 24 months likely of rate cuts. And of course, when we look at rate cuts happening, we might possibly, according to Yahoo Finance, 5 rounds in 2025. And of course, stock market has already surged. China has also increased liquidity. Stock market has surged once they have a first round of interest rates lowering. And when profit happens in 2025, my opinion is that when a lot of people start to take profit from their volatile shares, equities, China market, US market, tech stocks, they're going to cash out, lock in their profit, and what are they going to do? They're going to shift it to real estate. And of course, I think if you already know what is coming, then sometimes it's meant to be good to take action now, because we already know that this will be coming. Why are we not taking action? So if you are ready, you're in the midst of selling a home, you're in the midst of clearing your name or decoupling and stuff, then you should really take action, especially if you're into D21 area. Because of course D21 you have 2 options now. You have Pine Tree Hill and Nava Grove. I'll leave it to you to look at some of the key differences in terms of PSF as well as the design. But let's come back and have a look at basically the design. But I'm going to end the macro picture right here with what is going to happen in the next 24 months to equity asset price with rounds of rate cuts in the horizon. So I'll leave it to you to look at that. But let's come back to Nava Grove. Importantly, when we look at Nava Grove, I want to show you another 99's project as well. This is basically, what project is this? Serenade at Holland. Similarly, upward trend graph. Now it's hovering at about 1750 PSF. And of course, this project is from 2004. Small development, 89 years. Quintera, 55 units TOP, 2019. Latest PSF range is also done at about 1,006 plus. Now, importantly, is that if we use this comparative market analysis, we need to look at a quantum. And we need to compare with the 99 years, basically, as some of the new launches as well as some of the projects that have TOP. For example, Mayfair Modern, Mayfair Garden. And then we look at the 99 years leasehold over there in terms of quantum play. So for example, let's say 3 bedders, you look at Serenade, it's about 2.65, Astor Green is about 2.3. We also need to work backwards and do a lease reset calculation. How do we do a lease reset calculation? For example, if you look at Serenade, when was the lease start date? Basically, TOP 2004. Lease start date perhaps will be in 2001, we need to double check, but let's just take this for example. Let's say if it's 23 years old, and you're going to buy something at, let's say, 2.65 million. You take 2.65 million, divide by basically the balance lease. So the balance lease right now, based on 23 years old, it has a balance lease of 76. So we take 2.65, so we take 2.65 million, divide by 76 years, times 99 years. In the full 99 years price, this home will cost 3.45 million for the size that you have, for the quantum that you have. Then you take that in comparison to the new launch that you're entering. Are you very close to that 3.45 million price, or are you far away? If you're far away, then it makes sense for you to consider the new launch, because if you're far away, it means that you're buying in the brand new 99, even though it's smaller. Maybe it could be 900 square feet or 1,000 square feet, but it still makes sense on a quantum perspective. I'll give you an example. If let's say, of course this Serenade might be a big unit, all right? So let me double check. I think it should be a big unit because the units there are very good size. Of course, it has its plus points. It has a Holland address as well. Tano 2001, 23 years old. The size is about 1,005 square feet, or let's say about, there's also bigger units, 1,009 square feet, all right? But let's say from a quantum perspective, let me come to the whiteboard a little bit. And I'm not saying that that project is no good. I'm just saying that from a quantum perspective, this is, for example, a 99 years in that region that is already 23 years old. And let's say you saw a unit at 2.65 million for 1,005 square feet. Yes, the PSF might be lower, but take note, the balance lease is 76 years. So I take this 2.65 million divided by 76 years, and then I multiply back by 99 years. That's going to bring the full price to 3.45 million for this particular unit at 1,005 square feet. And I'm talking about lease reset. So on a lease reset basis, if I take 3.45 divided by 1,005 square feet, that is going to bring my PSF to $2,300 PSF if I were to reset Serenade PSF to a full 99 years. Then I will then compare with Nava Grove. Let's say I'm hunting for a unit at 1,000 square feet, 3-bedder. Yes, it's smaller, but take note, Nava Grove have harmonization. And harmonization, basically, they cannot sell you the AC latch, the RC latch, and stuff like that. Of course, what you're getting is really steppable area. So let's say 1,000 square feet and you buy at 2,006 PSF. I'm not saying that they will be launching at 2,006. I'm just saying for example. And you get at 2.6 million. But take note, you're buying brand new 99. When in TOP, you still have about 95 years plus minus. Technically, the PSF for a new building is only $300 PSF difference. And you're getting a new building. Because this is, of course, 23 years old building already. Right? And if I were to reset the land back to a full price of what I'm paying now, even though on the surface I'm paying 2.65 million, but actually I'm paying 3.45 million if I were to get back a brand new land. Alright? But now I'm paying 2.65 for a 23-year-old land and a 23-year-old building, technically, which on a quantum, it seems to be the same as this, but I'm getting a new building and a new land. So even though I'm getting a smaller size, 1,005 square feet versus 1,000 square feet, but there's give and take. I'm getting a brand new building, brand new design. This is an older building. I need to consider whether does that make sense. But of course, second tier that we also need to make sense is that where are you going to stay for the next 3 to 4 years? All right, so that one I'll leave it to you, whether you want to rent, you want to calculate the rental and stuff. But of course, there's various perspectives, various ways to maneuver that. Basically, if you really love that area, why don't you rent a unit at Mount Sinai first while you wait for that? Because technically speaking, you only need to rent for about 3 years, or maybe stay with parents and stuff like that. The other side is not full-blown installment, because take note, when you buy a new launch, you have progressive payment, and you pay gradually for 3 years, and that is very manageable. All right, so that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like look at new launches. Let's come back to this part as well. All right, so let's have a look at some of future development. Dover Forests, take note, the eastern half is going to launch with BTO projects, and of course, this is under the prime housing scheme, and some of it I think has already been, the first one has already been launched in 2022 already. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting in terms of the master plan and stuff like that, which will then boost up future pricing. Let's have a look also at this graph from 99.co. So basically, the trend graph of D21 99 years versus the whole Singapore 99 years is pretty aligned in sync. In fact, I think it outperforms in terms of PSF on a higher tier level. I want to bring your attention to basically the Nava Grove site plan, because I've covered this a little bit on the show flat. Just want to bring your attention on how to look at this as well. So when you look at this, firstly, we always want to hunt for the biggest unit, which is stack number 3. Biggest unit is going to have the best facing, so it's going to have the biggest kind of distance from the next tower, and you also have very good pool view. You are shielded away from the road, but take note, Nava Grove is very different. The elevation is really high. If you go to the real show gallery, you're going to see the site model. There's going to be a huge elevation from the main Ulu Pandan Road to the main starting point of the facility zone. And from the facility zone to the first unit is still even much higher. The pillars are very high. So when you buy like the first level, which is like second floor, it's technically, I think, like 6th, 7th floor. So basically, look at my show flat gallery tour. Basically, we talk about that as well. So once you hunt for the best facing, and of course this generic north-south, then you can decide how to rank the facing. So for example, let me just share with you how to do stack analysis. If I'm hunting for 3 beta, firstly, let me locate 5 betas are facing here. Okay, so it could mean that stack number 6 could be a good facing. It could also mean if I flip over, stack number 20 could be a good facing as well. All right. So of course, this is another project. Behind here, we have another project as well. This is of course the project at Pine Tree. And this is a dual key I was talking about. It has dual facing, very good unit, 2 sides. This part and this part, of course, definitely they will get some road sound, road noise for Ulu Pandan Road. This is facing towards tennis court, but take note, the tennis court is pretty legit. It is underground, below the facility's floor level, so I think the sound will be contained. Of course, you're also looking towards the older development right here. And then when you look at 3 beta, then you can start to rank. Maybe rank number 1 will be stack 20, stack 6. Then after that, you can start to go for maybe stack number 10 as well, facing towards the back, no road sound. Then you can start to rank stack 7, stack 2, although this is an entrance zone, but it doesn't mean entrance zone is no good. If you get higher floor, it could be okay. And then of course the last ranking will be the ones that's facing towards the road. But of course right across will be Clementi Forest as well. So if you're higher floor, it doesn't really matter that much. So that's probably how you can start to determine and rank your units first before you head in for balloting. And of course, I would suggest that you really look at our show flat gallery tour that I've done together with Grace. And of course, if you need more information, you can click on the links right down below. I'll give a shout out to our PLB new launch consultants. They'll be very happy to do like a free one-to-one consult over 1 hour with you just to strategize for you what will be a new launch investment strategy. Once again, my name is Melvin Lim, PropertyLimBrothers. Hope to see you on the next new launch studio review tour. Cheers.